Imagine nonprofit work transformed by purpose-built tools. That would mean less guessing and more connecting, less admin and more impact, less stuck and more go. With the giving platform built for purpose, you don't have to imagine. Bloomerang can help you raise more funds, retain more donors, save more time, and grow stronger relationships with your supporters so you can spend time on what matters most, your mission. Want to see how over 20,000 nonprofits are using Bloomerang to raise, retain, and recruit more supporters? Well, take a free on-demand tour of the giving platform today. Go to jcsocialmarketing.com/Bloomerang. That's jcsocialmarketing.com/BLOOMERANG. Okay, on to the show. Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello. This is Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell. And today we have a topic that is really close to my heart, having served in the Peace Corps in Senegal and West Africa for about 3 years, working on maternal health issues. So we know that childbirth is a universally significant experience, but for too many mothers around the world, it is also a life-threatening one. And in this episode, we explore the urgent maternal health crisis in sub-Saharan Africa and the power of storytelling to drive change. So joining me today are Charlie Kunzer, Executive Director of ALIMA USA, and Neda Azarfar, Managing Director of Nazar Works. And they're going to take us behind the scenes of ALIMA's Ode to Strangers campaign, which is a powerful digital storytelling initiative that sheds light on the life-saving impact of compassionate strangers. And I will have all the links in the show notes. So welcome, Charlie and Neda.
Thank you so much. Yes. Happy to be here.
So Charlie, can you start by painting a picture of maternal healthcare in the regions where ALIMA works?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, ALIMA is a humanitarian aid organization, and we work predominantly in sub-Saharan Africa and also in Haiti. And as you know, giving birth is an incredibly difficult experience, or can be for sure. And this is especially for mothers living in poverty or what we call resource poor settings, which is sort of global health speak. And quite often they have limited access to healthcare. So in the sub-Saharan countries where ALIMA operates, the mothers face even greater obstacles often, many of which can be life-threatening. And this is lack of medical facilities, so there could be great distances to health centers, and a shortage, of course, of health workers like doctors, nurses, and midwives. This is also Africa, where about 70% of the world's maternal deaths occur. So what ALIMA is doing, and with our medical teams, is really to close the gaps in access to care across this region in countries like Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Ethiopia, Chad, Guinea, and Sudan, to name a few. So last year alone, for instance, ALIMA assisted in about 72,000 births. And this is and we also really want to look into how we can improve this access and find more innovative solutions to provide more care to more mums, of course.
Just to add on to that, how does ALIMA address the challenges that mothers and newborns face in sub-Saharan Africa?
Yeah, they could be, the main thing is really just to provide midwives and health staff. And also a lot of it is to do community outreach to let the mums and the families know that go to the health center is a safer place to give birth. And as I mentioned, was the research side of what we're doing is, for instance, in Central African Republic, we're doing a pilot at the moment where we're using iPads or tablets, essentially, not necessarily iPads, where the traditional birth attendants, which is essentially the midwife in the village, they might not necessarily have formal training, where they can use this app and track the pregnant women in their care, and also then flag which ones are risky pregnancies and be sure that they can go to the health center and give birth when the time comes, to try and increase the survival rate, essentially, of both the mum and the baby.
So I know, Neda, you work for Nazar Works. That's the marketing agency working with ALIMA on this specific campaign called Ode to Strangers. And I think what's so unique about this campaign is it really takes this sort of unique emotional approach to storytelling. So Neda, can you tell us like what inspired the campaign and how did it transpire?
Yeah, it was a little bit serendipitous, actually, because we were at a point where we knew ALIMA's goal for the campaign, and we knew it was going to be around maternal health. And we were just figuring out what the concept would be, coming up with ideas and filtering things out. And I happened to be visiting a friend at the hospital, and in the waiting room, I start, chit-chatting with his parents, and I don't even really know how, but next thing I know, they start telling me the story about how they gave birth to him. And it was just incredible. I mean, they were Vietnamese refugees. It was right after the war. The mother was in labor, and when they get to the camp, but told that it was overfull and, go sail that way to that island. So they get into this, small boat and go towards some island in Indonesia. There was a storm. Apparently they were shot at. They finally make it. He's, chopping, down trees to try to create some sort of shelter. And it goes, days like this, and she's not doing well. And he can tell, she's going to die. So he runs off to, find some people on this island. He finds someone, and somehow, despite the language barrier, communicates what's going on. And this total random woman believes him, trusts him to follow him along to this uninhabited part of the island in the middle of the storm. And long story short, now here they were. And I'm looking at them, these people, and they're just mild-mannered, and you would never think it. They're just put together, just look like totally ordinary middle-class American grandparents, right? But they've got this just extraordinary, amazing, I can't even believe it type of story. And it just stuck with me. And so I was meeting with our creative director, Malou, that evening. And truth be told, we had considered storytelling as a campaign direction, but we'd kind of both passed on it. We felt it had been done before, and it didn't feel like a particularly inspired concept to go to ALIMA with. But I couldn't stop thinking about the story. So I tell her the story, and at the end, we're just, crying and no, we were wrong. There's a lot of inspiration here. We just have to, find the right stories and draw out the bits that, will strike a chord with people. Mm-hmm. And for us, the thing that stood out the most was just the randomness, the ostensible randomness of it all. I mean, my friend's mother, she doesn't know that woman's name. They didn't know each other. She doesn't remember her face. That woman, this just boggles the mind. That woman to this day, if she's alive, doesn't know the impact that she had, and the family that she, that went on to become, because of her actions. Mm-hmm. So it's just is that the most truest form of altruism in a way, right? People who there's no personal relationship, there's zero vested interest, they just do the right thing. And it felt like that's ALIMA's target audience, right? That type of person is who we're trying to reach, these people whose compassion transcends, personal relationships or even language, and nationality. And so that was how it came to be. And that's how we came up with Ode to Strangers, pretty much right in that same conversation. We thought, let's make these people the focal point of the campaign, ALIMA's core target audience that they're trying to reach. And the rest of it also just happened really quickly. The lines, you don't need to be there to be there. You could be a stranger who cares. That was just to underscore how, maybe that story hinges on proximity. But nowadays with organizations like ALIMA, you don't have to physically be in the middle of a crisis with someone to be that stranger, right? So that was it. It was just random, lucky, came together quick.
So, Charlie, why did you choose this approach rather than maybe a more traditional awareness or fundraising campaign? What are sort of some of the elements of this that really interested you?
Yeah, we really took the storytelling approach to sort of highlight this real life accounts of mums. That really rang true for us. We've always been quite, dare I say it, kind of a bit more daring and a bit creative and a bit more artistic in our approach to digital campaigns. That's probably largely due with the fact that we have this wonderful relationship with Neda. And it's all about kind of breaking through and being seen and being eye-catching and piquing people's interest and attention, because these sort of more traditional campaigns, they work well, of course, but there are a lot of them, right? You just want to break this, break through and stand out a bit. So we have this is probably our third campaign where we worked with artists to bring the message and to highlight it and frankly, show the stories about mothers giving birth in the situations where we're seeing it, but also really tying it to what you can do, how, because it's very whatever, millions of people are in need. It's very hard for people to sort of bring their heads around that, right? But here is someone you can, bringing that, you can help one person. You can be that stranger who cares. And that really kind of rung true with all of us. We thought that was a very interesting pitch, and we thought that one might really resonate with people.
I think that's really interesting. So I think this is a question really kind of for both of you, but Neda, as a marketing professional, I know that, a lot of nonprofits really struggle with getting permission to share really personal stories or even any kind of stories at all. Some have confidentiality issues and really struggle to get these either client stories or people that have been impacted. So how did you navigate this process of getting these stories? How did you decide which stories to tell, and how did you navigate the process of getting permission?
For this campaign specifically, we let people know up front, this is what we're doing. We're putting together this campaign. We're looking for stories like this.
When you say people, you mean clients, the people that ALIMA serves?
No, because these stories are not ALIMA patient stories. One of them is.
So this is for...
One of them is, yeah.
One of them is, right? So that's why I think for the ALIMA patient stories, there's a process, and that's what Charlie really does. For the campaign specifically, it was for a campaign specifically. And so when we did the outreach, they knew from the beginning, this is what we want to do with it.
This is our intention.
This is our intention with it. And even then, I'll just say, people were comfortable to share their stories. But then when you're saying, okay, now we're selecting, people were happy to share their stories. Okay. Mm-hmm. But then when you're now, okay, we're choosing your stories. You almost, for some of the moms, it was like a shift of oh no, now everyone's going to know my, personal business, right? Because a lot of these people, they came through that crisis and now they're in a totally different place and space. So they don't necessarily, a lot of them hadn't even processed the trauma. So it was a different type of conversation going into it where they all knew and they were agreeing and they were excited to share. And then when we were talking about, okay, well, now how are we going to actually do this and present this? Then that's when it got more real with people.
Okay. How did you source this? Where did you find women to share the stories?
We emailed people. So my group is pretty international. And, I have a very big network. Malou has a very big network. She's Brazilian. She lives in Europe and America and, South America. I'm Persian, so I have friends in Asia. I have friends in Europe. I have friends in America. We have the ALIMA team. They're obviously very international.
Yeah.
And so there was a period of sourcing where there was an email, phone calls, and we got a ton of stories, really and overwhelming. And it was probably like the most beautiful window of 2024 was reading through and just talking to people and just seeing how much beauty there is in this world, actually, that you don't always get to see. So that's how we sourced it.
Yeah, and we actually discovered, I remember a story that we then ended up using was a woman in Cameroon who'd given birth to triplets in a kind of rural area, and she nearly she was in a pretty bad way, and they a neighbor to visit her and said, "Look, I know there's a hospital that this organization is running. Let me take you there." She was quickly. I think ALIMA actually sent an ambulance for this woman, and they took her to the hospital. And 2 out of the 3 babies survived, but none of them would have made it if she hadn't gone to hospital. And she just has this really lovely quote afterwards saying, this is a hospital that's been built by the kindness of strangers, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. So that kind of really resonated with us, and I already had when we started talking, I was going through my memory library of all the stories I've heard of ALIMA patients over 10 years, and she's like one that really stands out. Yeah,
I really like it. If people are interested, I will put the link in the show notes. It's ode to strangers.alimo.ngo. And the videos and the stories are absolutely beautiful. There's so many creative elements with animations and music. And Neda, how did you decide and how did you land on that kind of storytelling, those kind of creative elements, the artistic elements? I love them.
Well, thank you. I have to say that's really the role of our creative director, Malou Lara, knowing, which elements to use and how. And Malou is seasoned and strong, and she's got a very clear point of view. And a big thing for her is not just for us, right? This is why we love working with each other is it's not just to do the job that the client wants, but like, let's try to make something really special. Yeah. So that was, going into it, there was definitely a vision, but communications is a live art form, right? And so we also needed to be very responsive to the reality. So we went into it, we knew that we wanted the stories to be central, and we wanted people to know that they were real and the mothers were real. We considered shooting, but cost, location, and importantly, kind of like what I mentioned, once we got to a certain point, some of the moms were quite hesitant about, being so known in that way or known for that publicly. And so those realities closed some doors creatively and then opened others. So Malou had the idea of let's do illustrations, and she found the artist, and we gave reference images and photos of the woman to preserve that authenticity, but kind of said, you have creative freedom to do your thing. And that way their privacy would be protected also. And to keep them in, we did the audio interviews with the moms and turned those into the narratives. The stories, though, were really intense. I mean, we cut a lot, but it was still just too much to convey. So animation was a necessity to keep people engaged visually while the audio played, but also just as a visual communications tool to clue people in on, what's happening and set a scene without having to explain it all in words, right? That was really a big impetus for a lot of our decisions. We're a bit precious with the stories and wanting to present them really well. Sound, that's what it came down to with the sound also. That was a big thing because putting things together, even with the animations, it was still impossible just to convey both all the information and emotion. We're like cutting 3 seconds, 5 words, and just shaving this and shaving that, and just realized we need more from the sound than just the narrator, right? It needed another level. So we ended up going to a different group as a sound experts at Massive Music. And then that's why every mother's narrative has this, custom ambient track that's tied to her environment. It's just this other layer of atmospheric context that we had in there to try to speed up processing time, people's ability to transport themselves in the scenes without us having to add the words. We don't need to explain the traffic situation in Sao Paulo. You could see it and you hear it and you get it. And that actually worked for everything except for Man Who Stopped a Train. That one, the ambient track was not enough because there was just so much in that story. So for that one, we realized, no, we need music to help express the full range of emotions at work. So that one actually we made an original composition for. I think that just it all shows you can go into these kinds of things, and we definitely did with a clear vision and a plan, but couldn't really be too rigid about it. The anchors are, we wanted to keep the integrity of the stories and our creative integrity to make sure we were, producing something that was really elevated for ALIMA and that would stand out from other campaigns. But there's also a lot of humility and openness that goes into things like this to ensure that you're presenting these stories in the most effective way that you can, given the realities and constraints.
That's really amazing. They're really pretty visually incredible. And I have a question for either of you, but Charlie, you can take this one as the executive director. I think a lot of organizations do storytelling in some way, but a lot of fundraisers struggle to convert these kind of campaigns into actual donations. So what strategies have you seen working best for ALIMA in terms of turning this kind of storytelling into donors actually taking action?
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, we did anchor around storytelling, but you're right. That's it's hard then to convert into action, frankly. And we struggle as much as anyone else with these, of course. I think it was really anchored in these very personal stories that got people engaged and got that connection, that heart to heart connection that got people interested and wanting to know more. I think also this beautiful animation and by Rowan and the music by Massive Music was also draw people in really well. I think that, and also we used a patient whose life had really been changed by the kindness of strangers. It really tied to the title of the campaign as well. That was really powerful. Another thing I feel like we did that had a real effect on this was the use of influencers and them telling their stories of situations where they had been, separated from their child and someone had helped them and they were able to kind of bring that real life story that something like this had happened to them as well. I think that really helped.
I would say for this particular campaign, the aim really was awareness and audience building. Mm-hmm. And so that was what we created for primarily. And that was where we were the most successful. For, let's say, people listening who are, looking at donation and fundraising as the thing that they're looking for and the thing that they're looking to grow. To that, I would say, if that's the goal, then the first thing, the process is different. The whole process is different. The first thing I would say to a client like that is, let's break down that goal. What are the targets? What kind of money are we really talking about? And what are you all, currently doing to hit those targets, right? Like, how do you make money? That comes before you even decide if it's going to be storytelling or not, and which stories and how, because that right there is giving you your goal, your target. It's giving you your target audience in a very real way, not in the aspirational, oh, these are the people I think would be into this message, but in the, nope, these are the people we need to support us. This is who we're actually counting on to have this kind of success that we're looking for. And it also, for us as the agency, lets us know how the thing that we create for a client is actually going to then be used by the development team. You know what I mean? So we can tailor to that. And all of that could mean that we're come up with ideas that are not storytelling ideas, or, it could filter things out. And I can give a good example of this, actually. So a couple years ago, we had a client, their goal was fundraising, and they wanted a client. They wanted a campaign. And the way that they generally raised money was not through individual donors or major donors. It was through grants. And they were not looking to change that with this campaign. They just wanted to raise the money. But a point of friction that they'd started to encounter was that apparently some partners at the time had raised this question of, relevance. And the strategy was finding people with clout, like celebrities and influencers, to post about the organization. And they got media out of that. And it was great for them. And the executive director took that to people and, was like, you're questioning, our relevance. Look, this proves how relevant we are. And so it was a big win. And there was no video, there was no real storytelling in the way that, we like to think of storytelling, but it worked because fundraising was the goal. Then that was the thing that was supreme. And we oriented, you have to orient then your marketing ideas and your strategies to that goal, not take a marketing strategy that you really like or you think you should really be doing and then say, well, how do I make this work for fundraising? Does that kind of make sense?
I think that is what a lot of organizations do. They see something that another nonprofit has done, but not for the same intention and not in the same cause space and not in the same vertical. And they've seen a marketing campaign that has really worked and they want to translate it into fundraising, but it has to be so specific, the kind of storytelling that you're doing and the ask and where you're sharing it.
And who your supporters are.
Exactly.
And, where you're getting your money, because that might not move the needle with them.
So I think a follow-up question, and this can be for you, Charlie, where is ALIMA finding success sharing these kinds of stories? So do you use social media, email, paid ads? Like what kind of digital tools and platforms are you using to share this campaign?
Definitely all of the above is what we use in a digital campaign. But I think we found the most useful ones was Instagram. We saw a really great organic engagement from our partnership with influencers there. And they sort of really connected with the stories and then told a lot of stories themselves and reshared and obviously interacted with the post that we sent them. And a lot of these influencers were people who work in our field. So there were health workers, but also, mums and other people who just these stories just really resonated with. I felt that because of of piquing people's interest through that, they then actually went on to go to our landing page to find out more. So we saw a really great crossover towards our landing page for people to find out more about ALIMA, find out more, see more videos, and generally, poke around and see on the landing page. So that was a really great one, and we've struggled with that in the past. We actually relied on paid media as well, but it wasn't as successful as it has been in the past, and Neda can totally speak to this more. We suspect, or we probably know, because we ran the campaign in the October to December last year, and obviously a lot of oxygen was taken up by the election. Mm-hmm. So we felt that we didn't quite see the effect that paid media has had on our campaigns in the past.
Okay, I think that was very true for a lot of campaigns that ran last fall, last winter. No, I think that's really helpful. I love that you're using Instagram and working with influencers. I love to encourage nonprofits to explore that and think of it as a way to reach a brand new audience rather than just sort of posting on your own channels and talking to the same people and the same audiences that you've already built. I have a couple of final questions. Neda, how can a small or a mid-sized nonprofit apply the lessons from Ode to Strangers, even if they don't have like a big budget for storytelling?
Well, I think money isn't everything. It's important, but it's not everything. So if you are limited on money, I would say be big everywhere else. So give yourself more time. First and foremost, it can take a nonprofit months to just even make the decision that they're going to do a campaign and what should the goals be that we put in front of the board. But then the time that they'll give to, the creative process is really limited. If you have a lot of money, you can work around that. You just hire more people or you jump the line, because you're paying the big bucks. So you take over other people's projects kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. But when you're smaller, then when you're cutting time, you're really just cutting your own results and quality. I would say an example with ALIMA was even on the sound thing, right? So there's just no way we would have gotten, massive music to help on the sound like that if we didn't give them the benefit of time. We would have gotten it done because, we already had the recordings and I have an editor, right? And so we were set to do all the mixes and everything ourselves, but it wouldn't have been as good. And certainly it wouldn't have been custom tracks and original composition and a free Sonic logo thrown in, mm-hmm. right? So it's just like a perfect example of give yourself that time. The other thing is on the quality side, really prioritize quality. Be big in your imagination. If you are working with an agency, trust them. If you've got your own in-house team, assuming you've got a good team, give them leeway and, be generous with the latitude that you offer people to work creatively to solve your problems and achieve your goals. The creative director on this, Malu Lara, she's a unicorn type of person, artist, producer, writer. So everyone always wants her for every project. And what ALIMA got was because ALIMA gives her creative latitude and deference, right? So it's like basically what I'm saying is be a good client, and you're going to get good people and you're going to allow them to really put their heart into something for you and give you something that you can get a lot of results out of. It's not just money.
So Charlie, how can people find out more about ALIMA and the work that you're doing? And then Neda, you can talk maybe about how people can follow you online and learn more about your agency.
To see all these beautiful videos that we created and the landing page, you should really go and check out Ode to Strangers. And I know you put the URL in the on your website, but it says odeToStrangers.alima, ALIMA.NGO. And just interact with all the videos, watch them, read the stories, because they are really, truly wonderful. And also, we would love for people to stay connected with us, of course. We're on all major social media channels like Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and also YouTube. So you can, if you go to the website as well, you can sign up for our newsletters and find out more about ALIMA that way. And that's on alima.ngo. And you can keep in touch with us that way.
How about you, Neda?
Well, I'm out here in Portland, Oregon, just doing my thing. So if you're here, call me for a coffee date. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn. So, you'll have the link up and people can hit me up. And I'm always happy to, and maybe too happy to help answer some questions, just to help people get started with those first steps. And you can, definitely also go to my agency's website, nazarworks.com, and look at all the different things that we can offer nonprofits of different sizes.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for sharing your expertise, for talking about the campaign. And I know that my listeners are really going to benefit from it. So thank you both.
Thank you so much for having us. This is great.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review, because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.